Young Show.
Hello. A friend of ours, Marion Thompson, was called for jury duty a few months ago. And what she in her writer's mind saw in the different cases on which she sat was a fascinating world within a world. And our story tonight is the result of her delicate insight into that world. Several months ago, an altogether too familiar drama happened. This time it was at night in an alley in downtown Los Angeles.
All right, Grady. Foreman on the beat got it. Yeah.
What you have just seen is the testimony in the case of the State versus Robert Washburn, on which the jury is now deliberating.
Please. Nobody's trying to impose on you. Please. I don't have to tell you how serious this is. Sounds all like my house all the time. Please, ladies and gentlemen.
Some people may enjoy wasting time, but I have more important things to do.
Well, Mrs. Wilcox, everyone, please, not all at once.
What you need is a gavel, Mr. Tremaine.
What you need is a decision.
Yes, let's get it decided now.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we've been in this room nearly 4 hours, and we're still right where we were when we began.
We wouldn't be if some people weren't so stubborn.
Mrs. Wilcox, please, let's try not to get personal. Let's try to come to some agreement. Now, is the Washburn boy guilty of homicide, or isn't he?
Most of us agree, Mr. Tremaine. We feel he's guilty.
But it's not enough to feel he's guilty. We're supposed to be sure of it, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Personally, I am sure. But the lady has a point. Why don't we go over it once more and then take another poll?
That's a good idea.
Once more? But that's just a waste of time.
Very well. Now then. We know a man is dead.
Yes?
That's Pellegrini, the cafe owner. We know the watchman saw the boy hiding in the alley where the man died.
Yes?
We know he saw a struggle before the man died.
Yes?
We know the police picked up the boy at the end of the alley after the man died.
Yes?
And Washburn himself admits that he was in the alley the whole time.
But he also said there was another man with Pellegrini, remember?
There's always another man.
Sure, the little man who wasn't there.
And don't forget the night watchman. He saw the whole thing. And he swore there was no one else in the alley.
Well, I'm still not convinced it was the boy who did it.
The boy is a hoodlum with a bad record. What more is there to discuss?
Quite a lot, Mrs. Wilcox. But there's several points that I'm not clear on either.
It's not a good idea to bring in a verdict too fast. Besides, the bailiff said if we don't have a verdict by 6 o'clock, they'll have to take us out to dinner.
My dear man, are you suggesting that just for a free meal we prolong this discussion?
Of course not, ma'am. But just between us, I'm getting tired of home cooking.
Mr. Tremaine, you did say that I could have a turn?
Certainly. Go right ahead.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm sorry I seem to be holding things up. However, I don't think I'm alone in my uncertainty. But even if I were, I'd still have to hold things up because there's still something about this case that bothers me. It's true, Mrs. Wilcox, that the boy does look like a hoodlum. And, well, from his past record, he probably is a hoodlum. And that the watchman looks like a nice old gentleman with an honest face, but, well, good heavens, we're not supposed to base our verdict on those things. Judge gave us specific instructions. Well, just let me read you one of the things he said to us. To the jury is assigned the duty of rendering a decision based on the facts of the case. Well, I'm sorry. I just don't think we have all the facts. But something's missing.
That this rig will be locked up all night.
I don't care if I'm locked up all week. If we can just settle the thing according to our consciences and the facts.
You want facts, Miss Ives. All right. I'll give you facts. Besides the fact that the boy's record speaks for itself. It is a fact that the dead man's wallet is missing. It is a fact that the boy had $80 on him when he was picked up by the police.
Yes, it is, but he accounted for that $80, you remember?
By winning it in a pool hall?
Yes.
Oh, my dear, a likely story.
You must admit $80 is a lot of money for a kid like that to have on him.
He didn't have any witnesses to back up his story about the pool hall anyway.
And another thing, $80 is just about a day's receipts for a little short order place like Pellegrini's. Granted?
Granted. Oh, yes, all of it.
Well, then you change your mind.
No.
Well, why in heaven's name? What are you bothered about now?
The wallet. The missing wallet, for one thing. You're right, it is a fact that it wasn't found on Pellegrini's body, but it's also a fact that it wasn't found on Robert Washburn. So? Well, what became of it?
Well, he must have thrown it away as he started to run.
Well, then why didn't the police find it in the alley? I mean, it was a very important piece of evidence, and they never did find it, you know.
And they never found any fingerprints to tie the boy in with it either.
And that's right. That's just what I mean. You see, it just doesn't add up. Something's missing somewhere. I don't know.
Is that all, Miss Ives?
I guess so.
Well, suppose we take that pool now.
Yes, let's do.
Put them in the basket. Pass it down. Guilty. 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 Not guilty.
Oh.
Guilty. Not guilty. 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 Not guilty. 9 for conviction, 3 for acquittal. Only 1 vote changed since the first poll. Well, folks, where do we go from here?
I say we go to dinner. Let's ring for the bailiff.
Miss Ives.
Yes?
If I'm ever on trial for a crime, I hope you'll be on my jury. What makes you so sure that kid is innocent?
I don't have to be sure he's innocent. But before I can vote to send him to jail, I have to be awfully sure he's guilty. Can you prove it?
Maybe. Let's just go back over the watchman's testimony again.
All right.
Remember what he said? He said...
I'm making my rounds in the warehouse. That's upstairs on the 2nd floor, across the alley from the cafe. I usually check the alley on my rounds. I see this young boy standing there leaning against the building. Couldn't see his face too well, but he was young. I could tell by his build he was young. Then the lights went out in the cafe across the way, so I clocked up. Next thing I knew, this kid and Pellegrini, the owner of the cafe, was fighting. And I see this kid knock Pellegrini down. So I dial a direct line to the police and hang up. That means they call back right away. It's a special system we have. I keep watching this alley all the time to see what happens. Then the phone begins ringing. Well, the kid heard the phone ring too and started running up the alley. But there's an officer right there waiting to nab him.
You must admit, Miss Ives, that's a simple, clear-cut story.
Yes, except the watchman admitted he couldn't see the boy's face very well.
But he did identify him by his build.
Well, I know.
And by
he did,
his
but-
cap. And don't forget, that watchman has a fine record and a good reputation.
That's right. And his testimony was very straightforward and tight.
Maybe that's what's bothering me. It's almost too tight. To be true, I mean.
Are you accusing him of perjury, Miss Ives?
Oh, no, certainly not, Mrs. Wilcox. It's just that Well, sometimes people don't see what they think they see, especially when they're telling about it months later.
And so if he couldn't make out the boy's face too well, there might have been something else he missed.
That's my point.
My dear, you seem a nice, sensible girl. Would you mind explaining your attitude?
Oh, well, it has a little to do with something that happened at my house a little while ago. I was coming home one night from a PTA meeting and found my best living room lamp smashed. Well, I was sure that Timmy had... Oh, he's my oldest boy. I was sure that Timmy had done it. He will play football in the house, and he'd already broken 3 things in just 1 week. Well, he kept saying he hadn't done it, but I didn't believe him. His record was bad, and the lamp was lying right there, and the football was very near it. So I punished him. Oh, not so much for breaking the lamp, but, well, for lying to me. Well, the next day, the babysitter called and said she'd done it. She'd been afraid to tell me the night before. You can imagine how I felt.
What I can't imagine is what that story has to do with the case of Robert Washburn.
Oh, well, I can. Listen, it's written right here. A defendant must be presumed to be innocent until he is proved guilty. Now, isn't that what you meant?
Yes.
Oh, look, so far, we based everything on what the watchman said. Suppose we take a look at it from the boy's story. Remember what he said? He said...
I was feeling kind of sick. I guess I had 1 beer too many. So I step in the alley. So I'm leaning against the building there, not looking for any trouble, just waiting until I feel a little better. All of a sudden, the lights go out in the cafe. Then Pellegrini comes out, and this other guy's with him. Pellegrini turns to lock up, and this guy jumps him. I'm scared. I don't want to get in any trouble. So I step back behind the doorway. I don't want anybody asking me what I'm doing hanging around there. Because, like I said, I'm not looking for any trouble. He took the wallet out of Pellegrini's pocket and ran right by me down the alley. But I like Pellegrini, and I want to see if I can help him. One look, and I can tell he's dead. Then I hear this telephone ring. I don't know what to do. I just run, that's all. But there's a cop waiting, and he grabs me.
And it seems to me that it could have happened that way. Well, it could have, you know.
If he was innocent, why'd he run away?
Panic. Sheer panic would have made him do that. Remember, he said that the policeman wouldn't believe him because he already had 2... what was the word he used?
Priors.
Priors, that's it. He already had 2 priors. And he was right. They didn't believe him.
And you do. You prefer to take the word of an ex-convict against that of an honest old man.
Well, no, I just think that, well, an honest old man could have made an honest mistake.
But even if there was another man there, why then didn't the police find him?
Yeah, it's a small alley. How could he have gotten away?
Because the police already had the boy. They wouldn't be looking for anybody else. You know, that man could have been hiding there the whole time. Or he could even have slipped out the other end of the alley.
Fantasy, sheer fantasy. My dear, you've been seeing too many movies.
I'm afraid you're thinking with your heart instead of your head, Miss Ives. You too, Mrs. Hammer. We're not supposed to be influenced by our sympathies. It says that in here, too.
I know. I really...
Maybe we ought to take another poll.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Guilty. 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 Guilty.
Not guilty. 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 11 to 1.
Well, I've heard of unreasonable people, but this is beyond anything.
Look, it's written right here. A juror should not surrender his honest convictions concerning the weight of the evidence for the mere purpose of returning a verdict or solely because of the opinion of the other jurors.
I read it. We all
Say,
read
it's
it.
6 o'clock. Looks like I won't get home for dinner. Too bad.
Mr. Tremaine, will you please do something?
All right, Mrs. Wilcox. I'll ring for the bailiff. I honestly can't see that you have any legal basis for your contention.
But we're not supposed to decide the law. The judge does that.
Miss Ives, 11 people against you, and you still hold out. Have you no humility?
I don't know, Mrs. Wilcox. But I remember I heard someone say once, if you talk about it, you haven't got it. Oh, believe me, I don't mean to be an obstructionist.
Why, be one then.
Miss Ives, not that I'm in any hurry, but come on, be a sport, give in.
Oh, if you could just convince me.
Oh, perhaps, Miss Ives, you can convince us.
Would you like to try?
Well, Mr. Tremaine, you're asking me to try to prove a negative, and you know as well as I do that, well, that's almost an impossible thing to do.
Well?
Oh. Well, now let me see. First of all, I think that you're all forgetting that the prosecution has to prove its case. That the, what do they call it?
The burden is on the state.
The burden is on the state. All right. Now, just exactly what have they proved? They have proved that a man was killed in the alley, that the boy was in the alley. That's all. There are no fingerprints, no wallet. They had only one identifying witness, an old man looking from across the street down in the alley on a very dark night. That's the whole case against the boy. It just isn't enough.
It's enough for me.
Look, can't you see, Mr. Rappert, that isn't enough? Can't you see that there could have been another man in the alley?
No, I can't.
Miss Ives.
Yes.
Let's suppose, just for the sake of argument, that there was another man there.
Yes.
You've still got the time element.
Yes. Yes.
How would he have had time to kill Pellegrini, steal the wallet, and make his getaway, and all that, mind you, without being seen by the night watchman? It just couldn't be done.
I know. Supposing the night watchman had not been looking out the window while he was talking on the phone to the police, for instance. It could have been done then, now, couldn't it?
Wishful thinking.
No. All right. I'll agree that could have been possible if the telephone had been in some other part of the room, but it was on the desk.
Oh.
And the desk was right next to the window.
Oh.
You saw that when we went out to look at the warehouse.
Yes. You see, the watchman didn't have to move at all.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. It just still doesn't add up.
I quit. I'm through. We'll never get a verdict. Let them call another jury. Spend the taxpayers' money. Yours, mine.
No,
Who cares?
no,
I'm
Mrs.
through.
Wilcox, sit down.
Oh, for heaven's sake, such
Patience.
a...
Miss Wilcox, maybe I can explain it this way. I work in a bank, see? And I have sometimes stayed up all night long trying to make an account come out right, even if there's only 2 or 3 cents missing. And that's the way I feel about this. There's something missing. It doesn't balance. Now, in this case, there's much more involved than 2 or 3 cents. This might mean that boy spends the rest of his life in prison. Remember, he said he already had 2 prior convictions. He told us that.
Yes. But what about Pellegrini's life and his widow? You saw her during the trial, and the kids.
I know.
What about their lives?
But I like Pellegrini.
I know, but... Well, certainly it can't help them if we sentence the wrong person, can it?
Miss Ives, admit it. Aren't you just being stubborn?
Oh, I hope I'm not. No. What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to be sure that boy gets every benefit of the doubt. Just as I'd want if I were in his shoes.
11 of us are sure, Miss Ives.
No. Not 11. 10. I'm on her side again.
Oh, no. She can't change her vote like that, can she?
There's nothing in the law that says you can't.
Mrs. Hammer, you've mentioned your children. They're boys, aren't they?
Yes.
I can understand.
But they have nothing to do with this. Really.
Well, we're right back where we were hours ago.
Let's take a little break. What do you say? And have some coffee.
I don't think you're right, but I admire you for sticking to it. It takes a lot of courage to stand up for what you believe, especially when you're under such pressure.
I gotta hand it to you, Miss Ives. For sheer determination, you certainly take the cake.
Mr. Fromer, what is the color of my eyes?
Hmm?
Oh, she's not flirting with you, Mr. Fromer. It's a trick.
Oh, yeah?
Lawyers use it all the time to prove witnesses don't always see what they're looking at.
Well?
But it's no good here. Your eyes are gray.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, they are. And pretty, too.
Guess we'd better get back to business. Come on, everyone, let's try again. What do you say? It's now 7 after 9. Just as we broke for coffee, the bailiff brought me a message. The judge is standing by for another hour. If we haven't reached a verdict by then, we'll be locked up for the night.
How about that? The little woman doesn't like me to be out at night.
Night. That's it. Night. Mr. Tremaine, may I see these pictures, please?
Certainly.
Oh, I knew there was something missing. These were taken in the daytime, both of them. Will you call for the bailiff?
What's wrong?
I know this may seem unorthodox, but I want you to ask him for something. Please, Mr. Tremaine.
All right, Miss Ives. I'll ring for the bailiff.
As you all know, it's illegal to have a live phone in the jury room. So I asked the bailiff to bring in this one. Now, I'm going to try an experiment. Oh, wait a minute. When the watchman called the police, he didn't just dial the operator and ask for police, did he?
No, he dialed headquarters.
That's right. That's what I thought.
What difference does that make?
Oh, it makes a great difference, Miss Wilcox, and I think I can show you why. At least I hope I can. Mr. Jonathan.
Yeah?
What telephone number are you most familiar with?
Well, my own, I guess.
What in the world are you getting at?
Well, give her a chance.
Thank you. Will you play the watchman for me?
Yeah, sure.
Will you sit right here on the edge of the desk, just the way he did, and look down toward the street? I think he was turned around the other way, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Now, and don't forget, now look down toward the street. Now, when I give you a signal, turn on the flashlight, hold it in this hand, and then dial your home number with the other hand.
Right.
But not until I give the signal.
Okay.
Mr. Tremaine, do you have a second hand on your watch?
Yes.
Good. When I give the signal, will you start counting and use this little flashlight?
Certainly.
Now, everybody else, please just watch Mr. Jonathan. Don't take your eyes off his face. It's very, very important. Now, just a minute till I give it to you. Now! Seconds, Mr. Tremaine.
26.
Was he looking out the window the whole time?
No, he hardly looked out of the window at all.
His eyes were on the telephone. You've got to admit that, Mrs. W., weren't they?
Yes, I guess they were.
That's right. It was impossible to dial and not look down. Absolutely impossible.
So for 26 seconds, you weren't looking out the window.
For 26 seconds, maybe the watchman didn't either.
Well, it isn't a very long time, but it is long enough to kill a man and get away and let another man get caught for it.
Yes, that's right.
Shall we take another poll?
Come on, folks.
Marion Thompson sent us this newspaper clipping, and it's dated 2 weeks after Robert Washburn was voted innocent. It reads, Burton O'Dello, cap burglar, admits killing Pellegrini. Cafe owner's wallet found on suspect. And she clipped this little note onto the back of it. I beg of you, if any of you are ever called to jury duty, don't try to get out of it, because you'll be missing one of the most rewarding experiences of your life. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. It's from Matthew chapter 7. Well, good night. See you next week.